flight attendants and pilots, what NSFW things occur during your jobs? Worse, Minesweeper. Wait, where do you stick the little flags? Row 12. How big are the planes you fly on? He flies in the Kmart 707. Perhaps there's a correlation. She definitely made use of the in-flight boyfriend feature. How did number 4 not realize everyone could see and understand what she was doing? From what I understand, she had her row to herself, and being on the red eye, lots of people were already asleep. She thought she was good. I was based in Switzerland. We may have had our eyes full some days, but yeah, it was nothing compared to the UK flights. Not a flight attendant, but the guy behind me got detained once we landed because he was playing with himself next to 2 girls in their 20s. Used to fly a small commuter plane. 19 passengers, no door behind the cockpit, also no flight attendant. It's real allowed, so communicating is difficult. Hand signals only kind of thing. Just took off on a 30-minute flight and a passenger taps my shoulder, which startles the hell out of me because I can't see him approach me and I'm hand flying. Turns out he just needs to take a leak. Okay, no big deal. Except we don't have a bathroom on the plane. We do have these gel packs to use though, so I hand him one and go back to flying the airplane. No autopilot. The flight is full and I'm not sure where I expected him to go. Back to his seat maybe? No. Instead I look over to the other pilot, and only inches away from our faces this dude's long wrinkly dick and hairy bush that probably hasn't been kept to in decades. As the guy's pissing into the gel pack, we hit some rough air and urine is going everywhere at this point. On the avionics, both of our uniforms, and my bag. If that wasn't enough, the whole plane saw it. Once he's done, he hands me the gel pack, like I'm supposed to do something with it. Oh no buddy. I hand him some napkins and point to go back to his seat. LMAO, this is hilarious. How much are the tickets for those small commuter planes BTW? At the time about $100 way. I think it has changed a little since then. Do they charge extra for the golden showers now, or is that just the perks of the job? It's a shame you can't have something like a cargo net against the door opening, then have them lean out and take a whiz with the cargo net, making sure they don't fall to their death. Bonus, some passengers may pay extra for this experience. Father was a commercial pilot. He has lots of stories. His most WTF NSFW story was probably having to deal with a lactating woman breastfeeding her cat in coach. This is the second time I heard this so far. WTF, do people really breastfeed their cats? It's called milking the pussy. Get out. Gotta put the pussy on the chain wax. Occasionally my ex-wife would squirt her breast milk at my cat when she was feeding our son when he was an infant. It was such a weird thing to watch my cat actually try to get it, and for my ex to actually be doing that since she hated my cat. Disgusting. That's like cows breastfeeding humans. Wait, titties for kitties. Not totally on topic, but I fly a lot for work, and one time I walked to the bathroom as a flight attendant was walking out. She saw me heading in right after her and said, "Be careful, there's a bomb in the bathroom." I think it was a nervous reference to her having just blown up the toilet, and she quickly realized what she said as I gave her a perplexed look walking into the bathroom. She pulled me aside as I walked out, and apologized profusely, probably knowing she'd have lost her job if someone less understanding had heard it. Well, don't leave us hanging. Did she put a bomb in there or what? She put some type of bomb in there, if you catch my drift. If you don't, I mean she shit and the smell could have killed a small child. Did you catch her drift, or did she spray? I too easily understood what she really meant and completely missed the possible terrorist interpretation. When you can't make poop jokes on planes, the terrorists have literally won. Flight attendant comes back to see man masturbating again. Sir, what did I tell you? Oh, you meant to stop for the whole flight, but the seatbelt light was off. Sorry, I have dyslexia. I thought that was a beat self sign. I figured I'd see a fair bit more stories about finding people dead. This is the first one. Not a flight attendant, but I work for an airline and my team receives all the incident reports for what happens in the airplane's airport. Some of the incident reports that came in were so shocking. Every summer we'd have multiple incidents of people having sex on board, in their seats or in the bathroom. That's pretty standard, but here are a few of the most notable ones that came to our team. 1. A woman breastfeeding a kitten, refusing to stop. Yes, you read that correctly. No, I'm not kidding. 2. A woman who exposed her breasts completely and ran up and down the aisles. 3. Drunk man attempting to molest the woman beside him by pretending he was asleep and touching her, falling into her lap. Really, dude. 4. A woman on a red-eye flight asked to stop masturbating. No blanket or anything. Just her and her whispering eye out for all to see. The flight attendant said in her report that she didn't make eye contact, but told the women everyone can see what you are doing and we need you to stop. The women were so embarrassed, gave a panicked sorry and stopped. 5. This happened at the airport, but it's my favorite. A male was using the airport washroom and then a full naked man comes crashing down out of the ceiling right on top of the man using the washroom. The naked man scrambled and climbed right back into the ceiling without saying a word. The man using the washroom was in complete shock and told one of our managers that we have a problem in the washroom. I howled at that. Security and the police couldn't find this guy for the longest time. But when they finally did, he was a homeless guy living in the ceiling, still naked when they found him. He got in because of the construction at the airport. My sister was working at the airport when this happened and the incident report came from the head of security. I giggle every time I think of this. I've had so many WTF moments working in my department. I truly can't believe some of the things that happen. Edit. Apparently breastfeeding cats happens often. Flight attendants and pilots. What NSFW things ? Reddit webpage. I thought you were going to say that they never caught the guy, and some airport somewhere has a naked man scuttling about the roof like a deranged golem. That would be way funnier. I would tell all the people I train this, so a legend has it. He's still up there, wandering the airport ceilings, looking for precious unattended baggage. Bilbo baggage. Basically the history of the British Empire explained in one sentence. As a flight engineer in the AF flying out of an island in the Pacific, a sailor had fallen overboard and drowned. The Navy recovered his body a few days later. Since this is downrange, only a body bag is available, not a transport casket. Before takeoff the loadmaster comes to the cockpit screaming, yelling and babbling. He says the body in the bag is wiggling. Turns out eels have entered his body via his mouth and are wiggling within his body and causing the movement. Holy fuck, that is so disturbing. I know, right? Who wants to be called the loadmaster? That was my nickname at the quarter movie glory hole booth back in the 70s. I came here to read about 20-year-old flight attendants riding the pilot in the cockpit, and instead I get this. Look at the bright side. You still got most of the same core elements. A wet, slimy, snake-like thing penetrates someone's body, slithers around inside them for a while, followed by screaming and excitement in the cockpit. Alright, I'm tapping out. Oh my god. I can finally tell this story. My grandma worked as a pathologist several decades ago. One night, the body of a homeless man was brought into the lab. Upon examination, his stomach was noticed to exhibit signs of movement. Further investigation revealed that an enormous rat had gnawed its way into the body before the cadaver had been removed from the street. Grandma taught me to play piano, but this gross story is probably my favorite thing she passed on to me. What the fuck? Eels up inside ya. Finding an entrance where they can. Boring through your mind. Through your tummy. Through your anus. Eels. Not me, but a friend who's a flight attendant who came across this really stubborn male passenger who wanted a sanitary pad that he saw the flight attendant hand over to a female passenger. Convinced that it was an eye mask thingy you put on before sleeping. Arguing with her about it, she finally gave in and gave the sanitary pad to the guy who coolly removed the anti-adhesive and stuck it on his eyes and went to sleep. That's hilarious. I wonder what he'd have done if the female passenger had asked for a tampon. Asked for 2 earplugs to go with the mask. High altitude nosebleeds. He probably realized about halfway thought this argument and decided to tough it out rather than lose face. I think sticking a pad to your face would involve losing a bit of face. Best example of just give the customer what he wants to shut him the fuck up. A couple of our boys were on the return leg of an offshore crew change. 15 minutes out from the deck, they catch movement in the back. One of the passengers has unbuckled his harness and is getting up out of his seat. Big no on a helicopter. But before they can do or say anything, the guy grabs an airsick bag, drops his dax, positions the bag under his bum and lets rip. The bag lasted maybe 3 seconds. Explosive does not do this bout of diarrhea justice. Volcanic might not. If I hadn't seen the photos, I wouldn't have believed it. It coated the floor. his seat, the seats beside it and the poor sods in them. Splash the windows and ceiling and row of seats behind. Shit everywhere. And the smell. The real kicker is that, even though they are only 15 minutes from the rig, they couldn't go back. If they did, the chopper would be stuck on the deck until it could be decontaminated by a cleaning crew. There's only one deck, so we'd have to send a second helicopter out to winch down said cleaning crew. A dangerous and expensive operation. Meanwhile, everyone due to come off swing in the next few days would be stuck on the rig until we did, while there wouldn't be enough beds in the town for the incoming crews. And the nature of the rig is such that it can't fully operate while there is a chopper on deck. Literally millions of dollars in lost production. One dude with a rumbly tummy he didn't tell the rig medic about because he was just that keen to get home. And several hundred people are, potentially, right up shit creek. So, they take one for the team and push on. Tell the culprit to sit back down and put his harness back on and pray for a tailwind. 2 hours flying back to base. It's Australia. Tropical and summer. And commercial helicopters don't have great aircon. The smell gets worse and worse, and it's not helped when some of the guys have to use the sick bags for their intended purpose. By the end of the flight, the pilots are all but flying with their heads out of the cockpit windows just to breath, and have given serious consideration to landing as soon as they were over the mainland, or any land. When they finally got in, it was approaching swamps of Dagobah level stank. Never had a disembark that fast, and you'd better believe the pilots did shut down and record. There was a queue for hoses. When the engineers started to do a damage assessment, it was even worse. That shit was runny, and grainy, and found its way into every crack and crevice and bolt hole. The seats nearest to the guy were literally soaked in shit and puke, and it was in the life vests and cabin raft. There was even splash in the cockpit everywhere. We had to fly in a specialist cleaning crew, the kind that normally does crime scenes, and fully strip and dismantle the cabin down to bare fuselage. In the end, the guy's seat and the seat of the guy to his right were so saturated, so caked and stained and soaked with his shit that we had to write them off. Tens of thousands for replacement, plus more in maintenance and lost flying time. The guy in that second seat sat there, coated head to toe in his seatmate's shit the entire flight without moving or saying a single word. The guy in that second seat sat there, coated head to toe in his seatmate's shit the entire flight without moving or saying a single word, plotting his revenge. Edit. Wow, this blew up. I went away for 6 hours and came back to the highest voted comment I've ever made. He didn't say a word, as that would involve opening his mouth. Smart man. That guy probably passed out, like Monica. Old mate probably got some serious industrial grade PTSD. The nightmares and flashbacks from that would be a blast colon. You did this to me and I will forever hate you for it. I feel like I did this story justice by reading it while shitting. Would the damage be smaller if he just shat his pants? This was my thinking, but on reflection, no man-made garment could have contained it. Then again, it would have been the lesser of two evils. While in the service of His Royal Majesty's Navy, one must always choose the lesser of two evils. Not safe for life, man. Nobody on here has asked to see the pictures. AMA request for the guy in that second seat. What kind of Zen mind control would you have to hold it together through that? This is the single greatest and yet also the worst thing I have read on Reddit. I was a flight attendant for 6 years. Summer flights to party islands like Ibiza, Mallorca and Mykonos could get quite raunchy, like women boarding in fishnets, wanking and blowjobs at the back of the aircraft. Edit. By fishnets I don't mean just tights, I mean full body fishnets. No bra and the skimpiest thong you can imagine. And that's just the airline staff. So you're saying Ryanair can no longer afford full uniforms for staff? Yes they can. It's just that management got new Porsches and you wouldn't believe what they charge for a set of wheels nowadays. So, it was either that or scrap the plane's seatbelts. See, it was a decision in favor of safety. Brits have no sense of decency once they leave the mothership. Edit. My top comment of the week is about pissing on the Brits. I have revenged for Choda. Naughty Anglo hijinks ensue the second they leave the Queen's line of sight. Like solitaire. I remember last year there was headlines because a guy was fucking a girl in his seat, with her on top, on a Ryanair Manchester Ibiza flight. Turned out he was cheating on his pregnant girlfriend into the bargain. Edit. Source. Redirect notice webpage. Actually his fianca. Wanker. My wife and I bought last-minute tickets to a family event and could not get seats next to each other. Once we boarded, I convinced the guy sitting next to my wife to switch seats with me. Nice guy takes my assigned seat, which was next to a woman who was apparently suffering from the flu. 5 minutes after takeoff, she projectile vomits, but tried to use a pillow to cover her mouth, which just made the vomit spray out sideways, all over the poor guy. He just sits there for a moment, frozen, and slowly turns back to look at me with this face that said, "You did this to me and I will forever hate you for it." I offered to buy him a drink but he ignored me. It was a 6-hour flight. "You did this to me and I will forever hate you for it." That sounds like the origin story of some supervillain. Looks like he just found his arch nemesis. That's amazing. Not for the poor guy. Should have told him at least it wasn't diarrhea. Holy fuck. Did you buy a lottery ticket? I was on a flight to China. One of the passengers up in business class decided to take advantage of the unlimited drinks he was offered before takeoff. He got plastered. When the plane started to take off, he decided to take a sleeping pill to tide him over for the 14-hour flight we were about to endure. Well, shortly after takeoff, the guy decided he needed to use the bathroom. He ventures back to where the stalls are, but shoots past them. He walks about 3 rows ahead of my row, whips out his member and pisses all over the row and the people in it. They had to move the passengers, rip out the seats, and monitor the guy for the rest of the flight. Whatever happened to him, I have no idea. I'm just glad he didn't hold it in for 3 more rows. I used to work as a baggage guy, loading and unloading planes. On our planes, we had to put the passengers' pets in a small area in the front belly compartment. We had an inbound flight that had quite a few pets on board. When I opened the compartment door, I was hit with the most gut-wrenching dog shit smell. Once I was able to see through my watery eyes, I saw one large dog kennel pressed up against a small kennel. The idiots that loaded the plane put both the kennel's front gate ends together. The larger dog must have pressed its ass up against and shit through the gate because the little dog was covered in shit and in the corner quivering and whimpering. Trying to explain and apologize to the little dog's owner was one of the hardest and funniest things I've ever had to do. So how safe are those pet compartments? I'm always a bit nervous when I have to leave my poor girlie alone and terrified with some random guys who probably don't give a shit. Are they well taken care of or do they get the luggage treatment? Pretty well taken care of. The pet compartment is the cargo hold. It's pressurized and kept at around 65 degrees on most planes. I usually tell the rampers to leave the light on in the cargo hold if we have furry friends along. Edit. I'm pilot. Flying for 5 years as in far. 1. Not on my flight, but a man took a shit in the middle of the aisle and wiped his ass with the curtain that separates the business cabin from the rest of the cattle. 2. Had a rather large lady come up to the galley and ask me to help her fix her bra strap. As a female I obliged and figured it would be a quick little hook job. No. She took off her shirt, hurt its tongue in my face, and I had to stretch her bra around her back and clasp it up. I should mention we have cameras in the galleys, so the pilots got a nice little show. 3. Had a 21-year-old male come to the back galley, puked all over it twice, then proceeded to projectile vomit on the aircraft door before heading into the lav and then puking again. There were 2 of us in on-board hazmat suits cleaning it up, while a lady is demanding for a cup of water. 4. A man had explosive diarrhea which flooded the lav and soaked into the carpet down the aisle. Had to divert because of the stench. 5. It was moderate turbulence. Some pretty bad bumps, so everyone, including the crew, had to be seated. A mother had her son piss in an air sickness bag and hand it to me in my jump seat. This doesn't even include the shit you see on layovers. The list goes on and on. Edit. Since some people were so offended by the use of the word cattle, a passenger actually came up with this term years ago, before I was even born. To emphasize how airlines, not crew, try to herd you all into tiny little spaces. Do you think we enjoy watching a 7-foot man struggle to fit inside his seat? No, we didn't make the seats. Not was it our say to make everyone agitated or uncomfortable for 2+ hours. I always try to accommodate larger passengers and always recommend people stretch or move around. Just let us finish our service and you can have the entire aisle galley to move. A man had explosive diarrhea which flooded the lav and soaked into the carpet down the aisle. Had to divert because of the stench. AMA request. The guy who pooped an airplane out of the sky. I feel sorry for the guy. I mean, shit happens. Probably not by something he did intentionally, and to be blamed for delaying 200-300 people for a few hours and ruining their trip. Harsh thing to light down. Thank you for your service. Edit. This is my most upvoted comment ever. WTF. I've seen some shit. Flight attendants. On a flight to Cancun, everyone was drinking getting their vacation on early. Somehow, a passenger lets loose the most silent, most deadly fart ever. It was the kind of smell that caused complete strangers to become friends in a shared moment of horrid existence. Lots of gagging. The stench awoke my sleeping GF. The stewardess, en route to a call button further up the section, stopped, gagged and turned back around, fleeing to safety. What? No oxygen mask deployed. That must be one hell of a fart to have enough air to depressurize the plane. Oh, that happened to me once. A guy next to me was playing with himself into a brown paper bag. I was only 12 though, so I had no idea what was going on. He was moved to the back of the plane and detained once we landed. Holy shit. The old Reddit man handled the ham candle on a plane scandal. That's fucking horrible, but had the potential to be much worse. When you say essentially this kid is under my care, do you mean you were keeping an eye out for her unofficially? Not OP, but I think the little girl was an unaccompanied minor, so she was flying by herself. Naturally I would think the FARs would look out for them. This is true. I was often an growing up when I'd travel to see my mom, and the flight attendants would constantly check in on me. Not pilot or flight attendant, and actually happened during TSA screening. After a weekend of EDC in Vegas, everyone is lined up to go home. Strike up conversation with the girl in front of us, and she mentions how she had a surplus of party favors left over from said festival. She said she didn't know what to do with them and decided to take them before getting on the plane. Tsar takes one look at her eyes and tells her to lift up her shirt or something like that. Didn't quite get the gist of it, and she lifts up her entire shirt with bra, flashing that Tsar agent. She was promptly escorted into secondary. 5 minutes before the plane was due to take off, she ambles on the plane and finds a seat. So she consumed all her party favors, and they didn't find anything else, so they let her on the plane. I think she had taken them before getting to the airport. Was extremely surprised to see she had gotten on the plane too. I'm a pilot and spent a lot of time scouring NTSB reports for various reasons. One time, I ran across an interesting one. The NTSB's probable cause was the pilot in command's improper in-flight decision to divert her attention to other activities not related to the conduct of the flight. Contributing to the accident was the exceeding of the design limits of the airplane, leading to a wing failure. The rest of the report indicated the occupants were partially clothed and the front right seat was in the full aft reclining position. Unfortunately, they did not survive the crash, but I always found the NTSB's wording of the report more entertaining than I probably should given the circumstances. They word things very professionally, and I'm sure someone had to come up with a way of saying they were having sex and crashed without actually saying it. Report is here. MIA 92 FAR 051 webpage. They word things very professionally, and I'm sure someone had to come up with a way of saying they were having sex and crashed without actually saying it. Oh, I'm sure multiple people collaborated to come up with that phrasing. Kind of hilarious to picture that. So, have you figured out what caused that fucking accident yet? Well, funny you should put it that way, boss. Now, we need to come up with a way to word it. Not a related field, but I've definitely collaborated with my work partner on how to professionally word a report so that it accurately reflects what an idiot our patient is without getting us into trouble. Yes, we laugh about it. It's not. Yep, I have done it numerous times when crafting our CAP reports. The best was when I crafted my own. Knowing who it would go to, I basically was honest, and for the notes on how this issue could be avoided I said user doesn't fat finger his passwords anymore. Got yelled at that you can't just put that in this report and reword it, which begat, user will endeavor to judge the size of his appendages in the input of a password to avoid the possibility of mistyping it. That got accepted. Examination of the individual's clothing revealed no evidence of ripping or distress to the zippers and belts. Well, where's the fun in that? Edit. A. Piper PA 34-200T's cockpit. Pinning webpage. If anyone's curious, I googled the plane registration number, and according to another website the female pilot was actually cheating on her husband. Mile High Fatality webpage. The participants in this accident, who were left unnamed in the awarding, were nominated for the Darwin Award in 1994. Wow, a comment with evidence +1 for you. Survey pilot here. Sometimes when I'm flying back and forth for 5 hours straight I need to piss in a bottle. One of my co-workers had his dick slip out of the bottle while he was going full bore, and he pissed all over the instrument panel. You should have heard his desperation on the radio. A couple weeks later, for our bi-monthly rotation, a new guy took his plane, and we didn't tell him that Greg pissed all over it like a moron. Fucking Greg. Hello control, Greg just pissed all over the fucking panel. I repeat, Greg is an absolute dumbass. Copy that, Greg. What the fuck? Repeat, what the fuck? Over. This is Greg to mission control. In my defense, at least I didn't shit on the control panel this time. Over. This is Mike in row 3. That wasn't to mission control. That was to the rest of the plane. Over. I just imagine it pop out of the bottle and he can't stop pissing all while it's sailing around like a fire hose destroying all the equipment. I'm a pretty big guy. I can hardly sit in economy without getting fingered somehow. Holy shit, that's genius. Where do you leave a note where a guy would find it but a girl wouldn't? That's literally what happened. I had a problem once while I was banked in a turn. I was done pissing. I tightened the cap on the bottle, but then the G-forces from the turn squeezed a little spritz out onto my pants. Luckily it wasn't a fire hose like Greg. What an idiot. But it gave me a laugh. Once I had a lady up in a Hoyer sling and she proceeded to poop out the biggest turd I've ever seen. I stuck a bucket under her to catch the thing, sat down in the chair to monitor the situation, and contemplated my life choices. Thank you so much for what you do. Nurses deal with so much shit, literally and figuratively. The last time I had surgery, they took my catheter out way too soon. I was still in part 1 of recovery, before going to the other room where your family can stay. 2. I woke up in excruciating pain. So there was no going back to sleep. Wasn't long before I had to pee. I couldn't move. Even if I could, I didn't know where I was. My nurse was, understandably, nowhere to be found at the moment. I was in such bad shape I couldn't even hold it and peed all over myself my bed. She left me like that for 30 minutes though, and wouldn't give me more pain meds. BC she decided I was a med seeker as soon as she saw me. Never mind, my BP was something like 140/98. I'm glad she had to clean up my piss, and if I had to shit, I would have as soon as she finished. I didn't like her. 8 months after my surgery, I find out that I had filled a script of painkillers that day. Only, no I didn't. BC I never even got a script for one. That nurse straight up told me that she wasn't going to ask my surgeon for one. I still think that bitch took it. First part, nurses are awesome. Last part, nurse likely stole your script of opioid pain meds after you had a procedure. Like cops, plenty are great. There are a few bad apples. Unlike cops, nurses will absolutely toss each other under a bus to protect themselves from accusations of wrongdoing. I was a flight attendant in the Marine Corps. Inside joke. Helicopter crew chief, mechanic who flew in the back of the helicopter and served as the aircraft commander's extension of authority in the cabin of the plane. Also loaded cargo, calculated weight and balance, operate crew-served weapons, and generally just worked as an additional set of eyes and ears, especially for things the pilots can't see. For example, looking straight down. Anyways, I worked on V-22s, and for cross-country flights we would go up over 10,000 feet. We had a bunch of auxiliary fuel tanks in the cabin, so you could squeeze by then if you needed, but can't really see back there. The guy in the back said to me on Ike's internal comms system, "Hey, I'm going off Ike's. If you don't hear from me in 2 minutes, come back and put my oxygen mask on." He came on Ike's a short time later and I asked on a private channel what was going on, so the pilots wouldn't hear, and he took off his oxygen mask at 25,000 feet so he could jerk off while hypoxic, along the lines of autoerotic asphyxiation. That has to be the riskiest wank not conducted in active combat. Active combat wank stories needs to be a AskReddit immediately. Hot. How did you like the V-22? I'm a former UH-60 crew chief, so the curiosity is killing me. My mom has been a flight attendant for Air Canada for 43 years. I've heard lots of stories, but one always stuck with me. Back in the 80s when China was just opening up, My mom would get a lot of older folks from rural China on her flights from Beijing or Hong Kong. Apparently many of these people had never used a modern flush toilet before. On more than one occasion they would simply close the lid, position themselves on top of the toilet, and promptly defecate on top of the toilet seat before leaving. Also, many of these folks would apparently just suck up huge gobs of phlegm and spit them right in the middle of the aisle. Luckily, things have gotten better in the intervening years. I know a guy who works construction often, and he told me one time they had to remove the toilets and replace them with holes in the ground because the Chinese guys didn't understand how it worked and they would squat on the toilets and shit everywhere. The toilets got so bad that they had to appoint a guy just to monitor Chinese workers using the toilet. They didn't get the concept of sitting and flushing. It was an alien concept. They would also shit outside constantly and the site began to stink. I'm not mocking anyone. These guys were clearly rural guys. Edit. Very successful comment. Thank you. Old Asian people are gross. A nation person. I am a test pilot for a small startup. Landed a few weeks ago at a small airport in the middle of nowhere to empty my piss bottle, fill up my water bottle. My right seat wanted to check out the heli that was there. Long Ranger. I went to use the bathroom and he comes running to me. Turns out the two medics for the local medevac service were in the heli making bam bam. We got to watch them both run naked from heli to their training station. On the way out over the radio we got asked to never discuss what we saw. Sorry, this is a great story, but all I can think about is whether those were two separate bottles or not. There's a slash. Definitely the same bottle. Well, why are using two bottles and accidentally mixing them up? If OP is Bear Grylls, then it doesn't make a difference. So you said, unless someone comes up with an AskReddit that fits perfectly, I won't tell anyone. It's implied that every secret is only a secret until you can tell millions anonymously. And we never did. We told people about it but we never discussed it. Nice to see a man who reuses his piss bottle as a water bottle. Somebody's gotta take care of the environment. And it kept hitting the call flight attendant button. Bing. I'm not a pilot yet but I am a qualified engineer. One summer I was replacing a switch in the cockpit on a turnaround, and while I was walking through the gate I noticed this kid, who looked about 6 years old and it turned out had Down syndrome. Asked her ma'am to take her to the toilet. Her ma'am replied, no, I'm busy, 2 seconds. So I saw her just stand in the middle of the room and just shit. Literally it was like a pool of shit. The woman screamed at me, can you get someone to clean it up? And I was like, whoa, I'm just the engineer. That was pretty NSFW. Feel sorry for whoever did have to clean it up though. Passenger here. Sometimes I get hot coffee from the flight attendants. It's warm. Hot coffee here. Sometimes I get passengers from the warm. It's flight attendants. Well, thanks everyone for spoiling the entire first season of People in Planes Getting Coffee. I guess I don't need to watch it now. I'm a co-pilot for a company that charters private jets. We had a customer who boarded with his boss and several beautiful women in revealing clothing. And in the air we could hear a party going on in the back. Loud music, men laughing and cheering, girls giggling. After a while the door opens and someone taps me on the shoulder. I look and a completely naked woman casually asks me how much longer we have before landing. I tell her we have a couple more hours to go, and she returns to the back. Old man wrenches for a private jet company. From my understanding, pilots get a free paid vacation if the passengers decide to smoke on board. And I don't mean tobacco. Whatever the passengers do is up to them. But if the pilots can smell it, they have to mention it purely because they now have a small amount of a controlled substance in their system. This means a few paid days off before they can return to active duty. In the world of private jets, what happens at FL 300 stays at FL 300. Pilot here. That stuff mostly happens when we get to the hotel wherever we're overnighting. I act now with a mean wink wink nudge nudge. Another guy I shared a crash pad with in LGA said he used to bang a far in one of the bunks when he went over the Atlantic. We both agreed it was awesome, but very dumb. Fireable offense. There's lots of stories like that, but they are all kind of boring after a while. My wife knows a lot of FARs and they don't seem to sleep with colleagues much, but they absolutely drink like fishes. In college I worked with a far-laming dude that was a FAR in the early mid-90s, and apparently overnights were just a sloppy gay orgy fueled by so much effing and essing that skin irritation was the biggest issue. Far-laming. Took me a second, but I appreciate the emphasis. Obligatory, not me but a friend of mine. Disclaimer. I have a female friend who flies transatlantic as a flight attendant. She told me a story of how one of the passengers had been in the bathroom for at least 15 minutes. Being a busy flight, people were pissed off and complained to her that he had been in there for a long time. She went to the door, knocked a couple of times with no response. Obviously being concerned for this passenger's safety, the doors were opened. Inside was a guy on toilet, trousers around ankles, headphones and his phone with porn playing and flaccid penis in hand. Bro fell asleep while whacking it in an airplane toilet. Embarrassment ensued. The only thing that surprises me is that he actually fell asleep during it. If he's anything like me, he fell asleep almost immediately after climaxing. Can confirm from personal experimentation. He was wearing a suit though, so it's classy. One time I was watching a movie and a hot scene came on. I got a stiffy and hit it under my blanket and changed the channel. Edit. Hit not hit, but going to leave typo. I think you made a typo pal : unless you were attempting to bash the decency back into your junk. Haha. Edit. Gracious for the gold kind stranger. Bash the decency back into your junk. I'm howling. What a sentence. I got a stiffy and hit it under my blanket. World's greatest typo. You should have offered to take her coat. Knee ice. Hold the moan. I see you are a man of culture as well. What section? The no fucking section. Man, I hate that section. Terrible service. Would not recommend. For me every section is that. That section is your life. My wife always sits us in the no fucking section. Everywhere we go. Co-pilot chair. You have become administrator of our hold for moan. NSFW. Serious question. Isn't that completely illegal? And if so, what do you do? Because I know that despite the pretty uniforms you guys are like the police of the skies and your word is final. It's absolutely illegal. 2 people just got arrested by the FBI on a flight to Detroit for performing oral in pretty much the same way. Must have been those new apartment suites in first class. Cause there's no way you doing that in economy. Not even your roommate. Just a plain passenger. But this happened on my last flight. About halfway through, the pilot comes over the intercom and says please come out of the bathroom. Smoking in an airplane is illegal. Naturally, this gets the whole plane on edge. Turns out, it was an old woman who was completely naked and vaping in the bathroom while refusing to come out. They eventually had to break into the bathroom and take her out, which then caused the woman to try and fight the flight attendants. She was arrested as soon as we landed. What? You don't vape naked? PSHH. It's called vaping. Jesus Christ people. Get with the times. There it is. Why was she naked? How do you vape? In a clown costume with a strap on. Like an adult. Not naked, like some deviant pervert. Probably thinking she could get away with it if her clothes did not smell like smoke. That, or she was just really crazy. Edit her. I wonder how often flight attendants have to fight people who won't come out of the toilets. My flight director found a bag that was moving in the overhead bin. It turns out, it was a young girl in a bag, out of Port-au-Prince. Howdy, it was a sex slave hating girl being sent to Canada. Edit, the security and the police were called. She was heavily drugged. No one knows who put her up there. I hope she is okay now. How the hell do you get even that far? What's airport security in Haiti like? Edit, I get it. Haiti's a shithole, you can stop commenting that. Having gone through the Port-au-Prince airport in the past quite regularly, having spent a while working for a private airline there, I can safely tell you that it is non-existent, for the right price. What about when they got to Canada? What was the plan there? Take the bag into a bathroom, let the girl out in a stall and walk out probably. You don't need a ticket or boarding pass to leave an airport. Not usually, but when you arrive in a different country from the one you left, you go through customs. What's airport security in Haiti like? It is Haitian. Want to get something through? Simply pay security to have vision problems. Was that a land at the nearest airport situation, or have authorities notified and waiting at the other end? I went through ATL a bunch recently and noticed a bunch of "Are you being trafficked? We can help" signs up in the bathrooms written in multiple languages. Wonder if ATL is a hub for that. Other people have commented this, but yeah, ATL is the busiest airport in the world, and it's one of the biggest hubs of international traffic in the southern US. I think Miami might be bigger for international traffic. but I might be mistaken. So yeah, human trafficking is a massive concern for ATL. Houston is the biggest trafficking city in the country, hub airport and massive shipping channel line border nearby. We have a lot of awareness about it, but not as much as you'd think. The Super Bowl was apparently a huge thing for law enforcement and allowed for a massive sting operation, as it was the most trafficking heavy event in the most trafficking heavy city. I'd imagine any major hub is probably a hub for trafficking. OMG, that's horrible. What did you do? Made him check it. A bag that heavy isn't safe to have an overhead. Nah, it was a Southwest flight. 2 free carry-ons. Still exceeds weight limit for a single bag, although I'd allow him to divide it between 2 bags. Wow, that's horrifying. I can't even imagine how scary that must have been for her. It's a good thing you guys found her when you did. Everyone is telling once in a lifetime type stories, but the most common NSFW thing that happens on airplanes is dudes falling asleep and getting noticeable boners. Edit. I have a new appreciation for top commenters lol. Thank you for all of your boner stories. I was that guy once. Woke up with a blanket and when I thanked the steward he told me why I got the blanket. Thank you for the blanket, stewardess. We were all tired of looking at your dick. Edit. Thank you for the gold. I should be shocked that my highest rated comment is about loves the skoomer's dick, but I'm not. Stay glorious Reddit. Me. I'm just glad to hear you were looking. Me. I'm just glad to hear you were looking noticed. FTFY. Oh. Sorry for being a guy. Apologies for nature. Sir, your penis should be the one apologizing. You're just jealous because you can see it at 30,000 feet. Edit. Thank you for the gold fellow flyer. How did he explain this to you? Sorry mate, you had a Rager and it was scaring the kids in aisle 12. Edit. Meant row 12. Fuck, but leaving it as aisle because it's funnier. I hope he did it tactfully. Once I was dozing off fully dressed, on the couch while visiting family. I woke up when a throw pillow tossed by a male relative landed on my groin. I pretended to sleep through it and sleepily rolled over. We've never spoken about it. I can only wish that this would have happened with strangers on a plane instead of around relatives. It was okay how it came up. I'm a nervous flyer which makes me chatty. We had been talking quite a bit so we were pretty comfortable. I woke up and thanked him for the blanket and he cracked a joke about keeping my lap under wrap. Dude was a total bro and I had a great trip. It was okay how it came up. Deg. I've heard you can just wear a jacket and get finger banged with no one noticing. Well, someone did notice. The idea that advanced apes shoot through the air in tubes and sleep with boners all the time make this whole existence hilarious. Humans are adorable. Supporting evidence. 1. Humans say ow, even if they haven't actually been hurt. It's just a thing they say when they think they might have been hurt, but aren't sure yet. 2. Humans collect shiny things and decorate their bodies and nests with them. The shinier the better, although each individual has a unique taste for style and coloring. 3. Humans are not an aquatic or even amphibious species, but they flock to bodies of water simply to play in it. They can't even hold their breath all that long. They just love to splash. 4. When night falls and the sky goes dark, humans become drowsy and begin to cocoon themselves in soft, fluffy bedding. 5. Some humans spend time in each other's nests, just for fun. It's not their nest, they're just visiting each other. 6. Some humans use pigments and dyes to make their bodies flashy and colorful. They even attach shiny dangly bits to their cartilaginous membranes. 7. Humans are very clever, and sometimes adopt creatures from other species into their family units. They don't seem to notice the obvious differences, and often raise them alongside their own young. 8. If a human sees another creature in distress, they can commonly be observed trying to help, even at their own risk. Most humans are deeply compassionate creatures. 9. If a human hears a particularly catchy sound or tune, it will often mimic it, even to the point of annoying themselves. 10. Sneezes are entirely involuntary, and completely adorable, especially when the human in question becomes frustrated. 11. Humans love treats, some more than others. Many humans will save these treats specifically for a later date when they are in need of comfort or reassurance, i.e., pickles, Pop-Tarts, popsicles, etc. 12. They are learning to travel in space. They can't get very far, but they are trying. So far, they've made it to the end of their yard. and have found rocks. Edit. Holy balls. Gilded, this is such copy pasta, but I'm glad you folks found it amusing. Thank you all so much. Edit 2. It looks like this helped a few people who were feeling down. Chins up, you glorious goofballs. I think this is my favorite Reddit comment ever. It's actually copy and paste from a Tumblr post. You are now subscribed to Human Facts. You might be interested in my favorite Wikipedia article ever, Human Wikipedia webpage. It's a really good sort of outside perspective on humanity. They are learning to travel in space. They can't get very far, but they are trying. So far, they've made it to the end of their yard, and have found rocks. The whole thing sounded like it was from the perspective of an alien that finds us cute, but this is perfect. They're made out of meat. You know how when you slap or flap meat, it makes a noise? They talk by flapping their meat at each other. They can even sing by squirting air through their meat. Neat. Terra Bisson webpage, by Terry Bisson. I have a hard time falling asleep in planes because I am always afraid I'll miss the food or drink cart when it comes by. Oh man. No one will probably see this, but I have a story. A few years ago I was working an early morning flight from industrial to ATL. We're trained to keep an eye out for able-bodied passengers so we have an idea of who might be helpful in the event of an emergency. Toward the end of boarding I noticed this huge guy come on and immediately labeled him an ABP. In the back of my mind he was probably 6 feet 4 and seriously built. I went to brief the exit row and wasn't surprised to find him sitting there. Extra legroom, but was surprised that he was totally passed out. He had come on like 4 minutes earlier. I tapped him and said sir a few times, and when he didn't respond I decided to go ahead and brief the rest of the exit row passengers and wake him up after. I ended up having to shake him pretty aggressively to wake him up. He woke up, let me brief him, agreed to the exit seat responsibilities, and then immediately went back to sleep. It was winter time and we had to de-ice the plane after we pushed back from the gate. The line for the de-icing pad was pretty long, so when it was our turn the captain came on and said that for the next 15 minutes people could use the restroom. While we were parked, I was sitting on my jump seat in the aft and was a little surprised to see big guy awake and walking by me to the restroom. The 15-minute window came and went and the captain came on again asking everyone to take their seats. Big guy was still in the bathroom. I knocked a few times and didn't get a response, so I called the captain to let him know what was going on and also asked the other fast to come help me in case something bad had happened. For another minute or so we pounded loudly on the door and got no response. It was time to break in. I shouted we're coming in and got the door open only to find him passed out on the toilet with his pants around his ankles and his junk dangling in plain view. We ended up having to aggressively shake him awake again. He finally woke up to see 3 women staring at him half naked on the toilet and very nonchalantly looked down at his dick and then back up at us before pulling his pants up and heading back to his seat without flinching or saying a single word. I'm not sure he would have been much help in an emergency. Not a pilot of FAR, but I fly between 100-150 flights a year. One time I was flying out of a small Midwest airport to Dallas. I roll up to the airport restaurant bar to get a bite and a drink before takeoff. I notice this lady sitting by herself at the bar. A gentleman approaches her. They seem to be hitting it off, flirting, laughing, etc. Time comes to board the plane, and since this was on Southwest Airlines, it was pick your own seat. Naturally they sit next to each other. I am a few rows behind them. Flirting leads to touching, and then kissing. You can see that hands are wandering everywhere. By this point, I am not the only casual observer. About 3 or 4 other guys are looking and laughing. We all bond over their public display. It escalates to a point where she gets up to go to the bathroom. About 30-40 seconds later he follows. Apparently they thought that was enough time to be inconspicuous. As he approaches the bathroom she is already in. A flight attendant stands in front of him and says no. Back to your seat. She knocks on the door and tells the lady to get back to her seat. All the observers are laughing at this point. The flight continues and she is practically mounted on him, doing everything they could possibly do while keeping clothes on. This continues until we land and all deplane. She quickly hurries off the plane. He is a few steps behind her, but she seems to be in a hurry. The other observers and I are talking about it and laughing as we exit the secure area into the baggage claim area. Then we see her, still several steps ahead of the guy, and she runs into the arms of her boyfriend and starts kissing him. Her flight guide just stops dead in his tracks, takes a couple seconds to observe, and then just leaves. I haven't laughed so hard in public with people I had never met prior to or since. Her boyfriend just got oofed, vouched, and owied. I'd hate to be his bones. Or his boner. Someone should get him a blanket. Plain boy should have been a bro and said that was fun. I am staying at the hotel. Have no shame in outing cheating pieces of shit. Dude did not respect the bro code. Remember reading once how one dude wrote to the boyfriend on the underside of the toilet seat that he didn't know she was in a relationship. Sorry. And itch the bitch. Thankfully that attendant was trained for standard emergency copulation situation. Sex. That happened on Passenger. Reddit is the #1 source in giving me trust issues I never had before. This happened to another pilot at our company. We fly small planes with no doors between the cockpit and the cabin. We usually put our jackets behind our seats. A passenger sitting in the front seats could easily grab them without us noticing. At the end of one flight, he noticed that the passenger on the left front seat was sitting on his jacket. Very odd, but whatever. The passengers deplaned and he went to pick up his jacket. That's when it hit him. The passenger had taken a shit on the seat, grabbed the pilot's jacket and put it over the shit and sat back down on it. It was only a 20-minute flight. How badly do you have to go? Thanks Reddit. My highest comment is now about shitting on a plane. Having both owned a jacket and had the primal urge to take a shit right now in an impossible situation. My heart goes out to all the folks involved. This is why my friends with IBS wear 2 pairs of socks, just in case. A few years back I ate something that didn't agree with me and had to run to a restaurant in Nick to take a shit. I shoved past a little girl and slammed into the bathroom and began a reenactment of napalming a small Vietnamese village. It was only after my torrid love affair with the porcelain throne that I realized there was no toilet paper. I was blessed with the privilege of wearing 2 shirts that day and ended up taking off my undershirt and tearing it into shreds so I could wipe my ass. I ended up using most of my shirt to accomplish this and had a long debate of trash can or toilet. Since the trash can was overflowing already I felt that perhaps the toilet would be the way to go. But I wasn't sure my shreds would flush. In retrospect I could have done a flush every few wipes, but hindsight is 20/20. Exiting the bathroom was what I feel is comparable to a walk of shame. There stood the father of said child I had shoved aside and I now had the responsibility of telling him that there was no toilet paper and a high chance that the toilet was most probably clogged. I did a flush and run. I washed my hands first, then used the last of my shirt to flush. The last words I heard were a mixture of a high-pitched "Daddy" and one of the staff yelling, "C-I-E-I-E-I-E-I." Unfortunately my night of adventures was only beginning. As I walked out of the restaurant I see my friend pinned into the corner of the building and a temporary construction wall by a homeless man who refused to believe he didn't smoke cigarettes. Does he poop in the socks? Something to wipe with? No number. This is why you just admit defeat and carry around a small bag with some TP, wet wipes, and a clean pair of undies. I pretty much never leave anywhere for more than an hour without my tiny emergency kit that includes that and other first aid kit and hygiene essentials. Plus with an extra pair of undies and a toothbrush you can make any situation work for a while. Didn't they notice the smell? Maybe he had a smell-proof jacket? Best friend is a flight attendant. She's seen some things, man. And some stuff. One woman pissed herself. One woman fainted and then pissed herself. Her colleague got caught by a passenger miming a BJ. But not from an angle where you could tell it was a mime. And she'd like you all to know that they see you. Yeah you. With a blanket. They see. Edit. She's just added to story of the mimed BJ that is was also a same-sex mimed BJ. And when the homophobia started flying, they started accidentally dropping drinks on people. So that stain on your cushion might not be piss after all. As someone on mobile Reddit in a bed with a blanket right now, you got me. I hope you didn't piss yourself. Joke's on you, I was only pretending to suck dick. Her colleague got caught by a passenger miming a BJ, but not from an angle where you could tell it was a mime, and then pissed herself. Not a pilot, or a flight attendant, but was once a mechanic. You would not believe how much porn I have found stashed in the cockpit. I was just a passenger but on a flight to Florida, a guy got drunk and stabbed himself in the eye with a plastic fork. When the flight attendant asked him how that happened, he reenacted it, and stabbed himself in the other eye. Not an attendant or a pilot, but one time on a flight to Hawaii, my mom was sitting behind me and next to this guy who's setting off weird vibes. I couldn't tell at the time because I'm generally clueless and enamored with his beautiful show cat he had under the seat. My mom was next to the window, sleeping, when she felt a lot of action going on next to her. Looks at her seatmate and he's furiously jerking off under a thin blanket that shows everything. Stares right at her like the scene from We Need to Talk About Kevin. BTCHFLCKS webpage. My mom clams up and didn't tell me or the flight attendant what was happening, which was kinda stupid in hindsight. I was awake watching a movie in front of her, never knowing that was going on. I totally get your mum's reaction. I flew transatlantic on a quiet flight once. On my row of 3 there was only myself and an older man in his 40s. The row behind us was empty. Sometime into the flight I fell asleep, but I soon felt myself woken by a tap on the shoulder. The man had stood up and was gesturing at our row. I assumed he was going to sit on the row behind, so I put myself in the middle seat and spread across the row to sleep. Towards the end of the flight I woke up to find he had seated himself in the end seat and pulled my legs onto his lap. He was running his hands up and down my legs with his hands under my trousers. I didn't do anything. I didn't know what the hell to do. I just clammed up and lay as still as I could until the descent, when I moved to the far seat and stared straight ahead for the remainder of the flight. Damn, that's fucked up. At least the guy didn't touch my mom while yours did. Really sorry that happened to you as well. I just wish my mom said something to me because I kept asking if she was okay throughout the flight because she looked really uncomfortable. She told me later that she didn't want her kids to get involved. I was 17. My brother was 11. Dude, sorry that happened to you. That's sleazy as fuck. Jesus Christ. Airline pilot here. Porn everywhere. At one of my previous airlines, a smaller regional airline, we'd find magazine cutouts all the time. Straight, gay, trans, you name it. One of our airplanes had a pilot seat so worn out and uncomfortable that the seat cushion was made up of porn mags. Behind access panels doors in the cockpit that held storage and equipment, you'd open it up and have a chick with a dick staring you in the face. They would get removed during maintenance checks, but they always seemed to find their way back. I remember a female pilot got really offended, but instead of going to HR, one of our other pilots convinced her to get back at us, so we'd start finding gay porn. I used to also fly corporate aircraft, and on many occasions we'd have passengers have sex in the back. One occasion though stuck out. On this flight the lead passenger shut the door that separated the flight deck from the main cabin. My first officer and I looked at each other thinking it was weird. Then we felt the plane rock a bit while we were flying. It wasn't turbulent, and after a few more times we both smiled at each other saying, "No way, are they?" Gross. Our 2 passengers, male in his late 50s and his 20-something Eastern European girlfriend, were going at it pretty hard. We didn't witness the event, but my first officer found the evidence: a used condom, stuffed into an empty potato chip bag. On the following flight, we had to fly the airplane empty to reposition it to another airport, and my FO went to the back and started humping the seats trying to recreate the rocking while in flight. Needless to say, that passenger gave it to her pretty hard on that flight. TLDR, porn and humping chairs at 30,000. About 15 years ago, when I was in my final year at 6th form, a girl and I hit it off on a school trip to Hawaii. On the flight back to London we sat next to each other. She proceeded to jerk me off, as Americans put it. I was next to the window. She was in the middle. My teacher was on the outer seat. I feel fucking terrible about it now. My poor teacher. But at 17 that was the best thing that had ever happened to me. I'm counting it as the Mile High Club. 6th form. Took me a second to realize you were talking in terms of England's education system and not in terms of DBZ power level. Over 9,000 featuring High Club. A school trip to Hawaii. WTF. Military pilot. We get shot at. Kind of NSFW. Just NS. NSFL. Some low-cost airlines have been making the toilets so small that when people are done with the number 2, whilst reaching round at a funny angle to get the toilet paper behind them, they smear shit from their ass on the wall. Poor FARs have to clean this. FARs do not have to clean this. The cleaning crew comes in once all flight crew leaves. They are the ones that have to clean this. Still pretty shitty though. Edit. Was a FAR with AA. Flight attendant here. Pilots are hooking up with flight attendants constantly. I've walked in on 2 different guys in the bathroom. Lock it. People dart. A couple weeks ago I had a lady use the lavender and even shut the door. I see camel humps daily, the male equivalent of a camel toe. I've cock-blocked people trying to get into the Mile High Club. There's also plenty of rumors of pilots and flight attendants hooking up mid-flight, but I myself have never experienced this. When one pilot has to go to the bathroom, a flight attendant will go up in the flight deck. Oh, and last year I had a guy who was drunk on drugs and groped a female passenger. Guy got arrested obviously and I had to give a statement. I would imagine lots of tray tables being left up and seats not being in the full upright position. One time I left my phone off airplane mode until we were halfway through taking off. You could have killed us all. Mad lads. You monster. I hear that if 3 of the airplane engines burn out and it goes into a tailspin and crashes into a hillside and the plane explodes in a giant fireball that you can survive. You know why? You took these precautions. But do you have a bear claw? Is it moral that we should hate sauerkraut? There's something fully upright here and it's not my chair. Is it your table? Yes. This might not be NSFW but it's one of the most intense memories I have. I was 12 and went to China with my mom. It was a very long international flight, so when it was time to sleep, the lights went out and it was quite dark. I fall asleep and a few hours later I get awoken by somebody just quickly pulling my pillow from under my head. It was a weird old Chinese lady next to me who decided to take my pillow because she needed something to vomit on. Obviously she didn't want to use her own pillow or the vomit bag right in front of her. No. She wanted to use my pillow and so she did. When she was done throwing up she handed me my pillow back and went back to sleep. At the time I was 12 like I said and didn't have the balls to speak up or even wake up my mom who was sitting on the other side. I was just sitting there very confused as to what just happened with a pillow full of vomit in my hands. I'm not a pilot or a flight attendant, but I do work the ramp. There's a few things I'd like to share quick. Ladies, please wear underwear. Please. Guys too. Working smaller regional jets, I've seen a lot of naughty bits, because some people prefer to go commando. When you walk down the jet bridge and leave your carry-on for valet, if you wear a skirt and no underwear, the people on the ground 12 feet below you have a chance to catch a glimpse your bits. It's not often, but 10 years of doing this I've seen quite few people's junk. Both male and female because of short skirts and commando. We're not offended, but we will make lame jokes about your shit for the next 10 minutes. Put a goddamn name tag on, and in your bag. Tags fall off. If you have no quick way to it who you are in your bag, we do search and catalog your belongings. Like the dirty, crusty panties I had to dig through, wearing gloves, to find the syphilis meds to help return a lady's bag, or the bag with a laptop with a huge eye or Hawkeye sticker on it, to which the password was GoHawks1. That took 4 tries to guess. Their browser history was eclectic. Found that joker on Facebook, after closing the various porn tabs. Khaki pants and some J.Crew shirts are not enough to it a person. Or the singles cruise guy whose bag had no it, and we ended up sending it to HQ to sit in a warehouse. That guy had like 10-12 Polaroids of his dick just laying about in his bag, not in a stack, layered throughout his clothes. His photo from the singles cruise was all we had to go on. No name, just dick pics, like a calling card or something, handed to ladies on a singles cruise. Find a mate? I still wonder about him. 20 plus condoms left over in the bag. Did he buy the big box and slam, or did he get the medium box and do okay? I tell ya one thing, that dude had high hopes and swung for the fences. I've reconnected people to their bags through boner pills, names on magazine subscriptions to dubious publications, and all manner of diseases relating to naughty bits because of medicine. I've seen your porn, dildos, vibrators, your crotchless panties, and your lubes. I found actual photographs, like proper prints, of shit I won't describe, but it was old people doing stuff. We never say how we found you, nor do we mention your contents at all. The looks on people's faces when they come to collect, or the shift in their tone of voice once they put 2 and 2 together, is priceless. Use a goddamn name tag. Shit happens. You don't want syphilis, I'm sure. I don't want to touch your crusty ass underwears. TL. DR. Wear underwear, or I'll see your bits. Username tag or some random will know you're ridden with herpes, or can't get a boner. Username tag, please. Seriously, name and phone. That's it. We never want to know about you. To me you're just a BK22, black standard rolling suitcase, and I want to keep it that way, Jerry. TL. DR. Wear underwear, or I'll see your bits. The problem with this sort of advice is that you will reach a small X number of people who will say oops okay well I need to be careful and change my behavior, and about 1000 X people who will say hot damn, a new way to show people my junk. My girlfriend at the time and I once had sex in an airplane bathroom. It was actually quite easy to get in and out undetected, but in retrospect I think we were lucky with the timing. The thing they don't mention is how hard it is to actually have sex in there. Those rooms are tiny, easy to get in and out undetected, not something to brag about, man. Gold. Did you just Beetlejuice gold? Blowjob, raise, loving family. Is that how this works? Selma Hayek, edit. I spelled her name wrong. Therefore she didn't magically appear. Got to use the 1ST business class lavatory. You get about 2 FT2 more room to play with. Got to use the 1ST business class lavatory. You get about 2 FT2 more room to play with. But no third dimension, have to fly international first class for that. I don't last long enough to need the fourth dimension. It's great, too, because the water runs no more than 5 minutes on the Emirates A380 shower, which should be 4 minutes more than I need. Lol. Chances are you weren't undetected. It's just that the crew doesn't want to have to deal with that shit. Source: my other half is a flight attendant. They see it, they just don't want to have to deal with it. My girlfriend at the time and I once had sex in an airplane bathroom. Hope you obeyed the placard. IMGA webpage. Plumbing problems at 30k feet are no fun. It was actually quite easy to get in and out undetected. I'm 100% sure at least some people noticed and just didn't say anything. Also, why did you do that? Bathrooms are one of the worst places to have sex. Double that on an airplane. It's cramped, smells of shit and piss, or at least disinfectant. Obligatory. Not a flight attendant. I was a ground handler. But there was an FA that came through our station regularly who once discovered a man who had stripped down to absolutely nothing and was masturbating and attempting to ejaculate onto the sleeping woman next to him, who was a stranger. This was on a small aircraft, memory is fuzzy on that, but I believe it was an M145, and they were sitting in the back row, which is how he managed to get naked without being caught. Well, there is a picture on Reddit somewhere on public busty where two busty Latvian girls have their tits out on Ryanair flight. I was there and saw it. They were afraid that they will get in trouble. I chose not to act on it. Edit. I found an IMG link. I posted it under this thread. Sorry for keeping you waiting. NSFW. IMGA webpage. Credit to you, Dasmithster. Those are nice fuck entities. I am moving to Latvia. Yes, but where is it on Reddit? All those NSFW subreddits are so awful. But which one was it, so I know not to go there? On public busty. You can't say that and not link it. Not a commercial pilot, working on private pilot, or flight attendant. I fly a ton for work though. The number of people doing blow on planes always amuses me. I've seen that, or the evidence after where someone left some powder on their nose shirt, several times. I don't understand. I've never done coke, but I can't imagine it being enjoyable to be on a strong stimulant while in an enclosed box where you have to stay in your seat for hours on end. My wife is a flight attendant. Many of her male co-workers are gay. If you're a promiscuous homosexual male, the flight attendant lifestyle is made for you. These guys get on Grindr and have a date set up before the plane lands. New guy, new city, every night. I have a friend who is a flight attendant. They described to me a situation where a man was masturbating in his sleep. Viagra and Ambien was a poor choice. I'll bite. My last airline I flew for used to fly a plane called the ATR. The ATR had a unique configuration in which the cargo compartment was between the cockpit and the cabin. Access to the cockpit could only be made by walking through the cargo bins. The cargo was held in place with netting. I joined this airline after the plane was retired, so I never saw it happen firsthand, but it seemed every old crew I flew with had stories about meeting in the cargo compartment mid-flight to fuck. Usually I'd have dozens of different people tell me the same 5 stories about fucking in the cargo bins, grabbing onto the netting for balance and leverage, There must be some truth to the stories, right? TLDR, there's a good chance your luggage may have some jizz on it if you flew in the 90s. As I'm not a native English speaker, I don't understand this post, but I fear I understand enough to know not to Google any words, so I don't have a proper viewing of what Op is explaining. As a native English speaker, I don't know if I understand. Doctors getting dragged out by United Airlines. Somewhere in our Flushing journals, if you find it you can't go wrong, company logos are on a broad display. So, heading back to Colorado from the Alaska cruise, I was a passenger, waiting to board an airplane, and our flight was behind schedule. As the plane is connecting to the umbilical, a slightly effeminate sounding man gets on the PA. I'm paraphrasing to the best of my memory. "Excuse me everybody, flight 999 is behind schedule, and we want to get you lovely people to your destination. So I'd like you to do me a favor. I want to make sure I don't see any diggers on this flight." A pause, and every single person in this small section of the airport suddenly froze, going from mildly inattentive to alert, even nervous. Glances were exchanged, across the room, across chairs, wherever you happened to look you could see somebody waiting to react, as we all processed what I'm pretty sure was the same question. Wait, what did he just say? No digging around in your bags or satchels once you get on the plane. Make sure you have everything you need ready to go so we can stash luggage and get everyone on board on in the air as quickly as possible. Thanks and blah blah blah. I gotta say, there was a general sigh of relief and some nervous laughter. As much as I want to say the guy did it on purpose, there's always the slight chance that he didn't vet his own writing, or consider the fact that airport PA isn't always crystal clear whether or not he was a good dude. People got on that plane in a hurry. Little to no time was spent messing around with bags and overheads. I swear we got off the ground like less than 5 minutes after we backed up. Wasn't NSFW, but damn close. I work for a cargo airline. We once got a priority mailbox labeled live reptile, loaded into a bulk cargo compartment. The box was empty. I once had sex with Eartha Kitt in an airplane bathroom. Poor darkest timeline Pierce. What? It came up naturally. It's not bragging if it comes up organically. Not an airline pilot, but a mechanic, and these are just stories I've heard from pilots, professors and industry workers alike. 1. Pilots normally get bored on long flights and find ways to entertain themselves. One of my professors used to play a game with his FO where they would have the chief flight attendant place 2 grapes on the floor in the front on the cabin before takeoff. While the plane was rotating, the 2 grapes would roll down the aisle and the flight attendant in the back of the plane would see which grape made it there first. The loser of the grape race would have to buy dinner for the crew that night. 2. The pilot, FO, and chief flight attendant would draw 3 lines on the nose tire. When he plane landed and parked, whoever's line came closest to the parking space line would have to pay for dinner for the crew. This was known as nose wheel roulette. 3. A colleague of one of my professors was cleaning out the pipe between the lavatory and the waste tank. This is known as a chapter 38 guy. No one wants to be that guy, because you have to put your arm with a flimsy rubber glove down the lav in order to clean out the clog. Well, the clog in this situation happens to be a hypodermic needle, which poked the guy through the glove in the hand. He contracted hepatitis C because of this. Please don't throw your waste down the pooper. Some poor bastard who's already on his boss's shit list ends up having to clean it. 4. Most pilots are on their phone, tablet, reading, playing video games or sleeping during flights. This one all depends on the flight crew as to what's expectable. I can't think of anything else right now. Had a drunk guy that was getting off the plane. When he stood up, all clothing from the waist down dropped to the floor. It took him longer than everyone was hoping to correct the situation. Lavatory overflows. Lots of them. They refill the lavatory blue juice from outside. They have at times put too much back in. The entire floor of the airplane is flooded with not so clean lavatory liquid from about exit row back. Don't go barefoot in airplanes. Trust us. Seen people go use the lavatory barefoot. Gross. A lady wouldn't stop talking on her phone. When the flight attendant asked her to stop, she told the person on the phone that she was about to knock this bitch the fuck out. She was removed from the aircraft, but then she jumped the gate agent on the way back to the terminal. Best part, she had kids with her the whole time. Also, she go no-fly listed by the airline forever and every other airline that day. We had a pilot lose control of his bowels in the cockpit, on 2 separate occasions. He was from there on known as Duce. Lots of people die on airplanes. Most common is have had cancer patients in the final stages go to sleep and never wake up. Our cockpit seats move back into the side metal rails. Had a first officer reach under the captain's seat, Lord knows why, as he was moving his seat and smashed his finger something fierce. Lots of blood. Captain said his finger looked like a half-eaten spare rib. Luckily this happened on the ground. That is about all I can remember for now. I will try to think of others. Not NSFW. But I was sitting across the aisle from a mom and her toddler daughter. The little girl vomits all over her mother about halfway through the flight. A minute later the smell wafts over to me and I glance back and see that the mom had vomited from the smell. Both of them just covered in vomit. I remember thinking the only way this could get any worse is if the flight attendant vomits while helping them clean up. About to get on a plane right this minute. Noping out of this thread fast. You are more likely to die in a plane crash than get eaten by a shark. Especially now that you're getting on a plane. Nice try, FAA. Damn it, sir. The fasten seatbelt sign is on. One time on a flight from Paris back to America, this woman had a baby with her but was acting very suspicious. Turns out it had been a giant block of cheese that she didn't want to ship or check, so she wrapped it up a blanket and put a bonnet on it. Long haul flight attendant here. Nothing too exciting really. I had a passenger shit on the floor once coming into Muscat. There's a corridor at the very back of the 747. Between doors 5 that is dark and shielded from passenger view. I've broken up a few passionate embraces whilst patrolling the cabin in there. Also, some of our older 747s are haunted. Whether or not it actually is haunted is up for debate, but I can vouch for one such ghost that scared the shit out of me once. Flying somewhere long and overnight a few months back, I was bringing the flight crew's dinner into the flight deck. I rang them up and said I was on my way up. They told me to watch out for Captain Death. I laughed it off. Once I was in the flight deck, they told me to look at the camera that is trained on the area immediately outside the flight deck door. Standing there, in the gangway, was very clearly a human outline wearing a pilot's uniform. Facing the door with his arm across his body showing his 4 stripes on the arm of his jacket. I took a photo that came out in traditional grainy ghost story fashion, which I'll try and attach here, but I'm on mobile and have no idea how to do that. They said it was a common apparition on this aircraft and that they were quite used to it. It certainly didn't help my nerves when I walked back through him. Edit, Imga, the magic of the internet web page. I hope this goes to the right photo. As I said, it's grainy as it was taken at night and it's a photo of a TV screen. But it still shows the outline of what I saw. Looked a lot clearer at the time. PLS post, my cheeks are clenched with excitement. The phalanges are missing. Totally not safe for work. We even had to stick up on extra phalanges on this one flight. My username is finally relevant. There is something wrong with the left phalange. Oh my god, this plane doesn't even have a phalange. One time I had the sex on the plane. Jerking it doesn't count as sex. Why not? It's sex with someone I love. But do they love you back though? No. Not a flight attendant or a pilot, but I was once on a flight where I saw one of the flight attendants giving a blowjob to one of the pilots. Now, the thing to keep in mind was this was before 9/11, when the cockpit wasn't kept so securely locked. There was a bit of a bug spreading around the plane, which I was asked to take care of since I was the only doctor on board. I made my way to the cockpit to inform the pilot of the condition of the passengers, and as soon as I opened the door, I see the flight attendant bent over with her head in the pilot's lap. I could not believe what I was seeing, but I managed to snag a quick photo of it. IMGA webpage. Stewardess. Nervous? Ted. Yes. Stewardess. First time? Ted. No. I've been nervous lots of times. The white zone is for immediate loading and unloading of passengers only. The red zone is for immediate loading and unloading of passengers only. You're just mad because of the abortion. Don't start up with your white zone shit again. Goddammit. I literally yelled this when I opened the pic. OP delivers. What a small world. I also was on the flight and followed behind you. I happened to catch the situation on video. IMGA webpage. Actually made me laugh out loud. Edit. Jesus Christ. Guys, evidently this is a joke from Good Will Hunting. I get it. I've never seen the movie. I'll watch T tonight. If I didn't see This Is Road, it must have been a similar magazine. Edit 2. Thanks to you Exilian for finding the article. I didn't make it up. It was Reader's Digest. All you haters can lick my ass. Don't forget the coffee webpage. I was on a flight once and when we got to cruising altitude, the pilot came on and gave us his speech about airspeed and weather at our destination. Blah blah blah. When he was done, I guess the mic stayed keyed up, because you could hear him talking to the co-pilot, kind of softly, like when someone accidentally but dials you. You couldn't make out a lot of what he was saying. It was mostly beeps and clicks from the cockpit. At one point, he must have turned toward the mic and said to his co-pilot, clear as day, man, I sure could go for a cup of coffee and a blowjob right about now. So, everyone on the plane freezes in place and all ambient noise stops as everyone is thinking, did he just say so? A flight attendant starts to rush up to the front to let the pilot know his mic is still on, and she gets about halfway up to the front when someone yells, don't forget the coffee. Not actually my story. I read this in Reader's Digest like 20 years ago, retold only from memory. It's a joke, Sean. It works better in the first person. Be quiet, she hastily whispered in vain. Your microphone's blasting your words to the plane. They heard that you wanted a blowjob, she cried. Dart. I get any offers, the pilot replied. That joke was in Good Will Hunting. You ever been out of Boston? Edit. I fucked up that reference. See below. It's not your fault. Found it. Don't forget the coffee webpage. The Reader's Digest version was somewhat modified to be more family friendly. I used to work with a chap who would date young flight attendant chaps. He told me of a game involving long haul flights, frozen poop and cling film, saran wrap, whoever held it and longest one. One time I was flying from Miami to Buenos Aires and there was a really hot French guy, maybe mid-30s, in my row. I was on one end of the 4 or 5 seat row. He was on the other with nobody in between. I woke up to his head in my lap and him cradling my ass. I let it continue because my god, he was hot and I was a dirty teen. It progressed to me giving him a hand job and afterwards, I just kind of froze in my seat for like an hour with his cum in my hand. I felt ashamed. A male flight attendant walked by and loudly said, it smells like someone blew a load, gave us a dirty look, and kept walking. That was a gross, neat experience that I still appreciate to this day. Edit. Yes, I created this throwaway a while back when I first told this story, then deleted the story. You can believe it or not, but this is what happened to me. After he finished, I noticed his wedding band and got pretty pissed off. I sat in my seat for the next hour or so being too afraid to get up because of the smell and also because I was just kind of frozen. Can't really explain it. The fast comment did not help the situation, but in retrospect, I'm just glad he didn't make a big deal about it. This kind of thing can easily happen on long-haul overnight flights when everyone is asleep. My cousin Walter jerked off in public once. Truth story. He was on a plane to New Mexico when all of a sudden the hydraulics went. The plane started spinning around, going out of control. So he decides it's all over and whips it out and starts beating it right there. So all the other passengers take a cue from him and they start whipping it out and beating like mad. So all the passengers are beating off, plummeting to their certain doom, when all of a sudden, the hydraulics kick back in, and the plane rights itself. It lands safely and everyone puts their pieces or whatever away and aboard. Nobody mentions the phenomenon to anyone else.